Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Nature Channel. Imagine this: inside every breath of forest air, in every handful of garden soil, in every raindrop that lands on a mossy stone, there are tiny living things, smaller than anything you can see, that have been part of us for millions of years. Tonight, we're going to drift through the quiet world of microbes, the invisible companions of trees, rain, flowers, and your own body. They are the secret thread that ties you to the living world. And as we explore them together, you might just find that the whole world feels a little softer, a little closer, and a little more like home. Take a slow breath now. Let your shoulders drop. Let the weight of the day settle down through you like leaves drifting to the ground. You don't need to hold anything right now. Just let yourself be carried. There is a forest somewhere. It doesn't matter exactly where. Maybe it's the kind you've seen before, with tall, dark pines standing so close together that the light between them turns golden and thick, like honey in the afternoon. Maybe it's a forest you've only ever imagined, somewhere cool and green and very, very quiet. Either way, you're standing at its edge now, and the air is different here. You can feel it on your skin before you've even taken a step beneath the trees. It's cooler, damper, heavier, with something you can't quite name. That something has a name, though. It's called phytoncides. Phytoncides are tiny chemical molecules that trees release into the air around them. Pines make them. Oaks make them. Cedars are especially generous with them. These molecules float outward from the bark, from the needles, from the resin that beads along a cut branch like a slow amber tear. They drift through the understory, moving with the air currents, settling into everything they touch. And when you breathe them in, your body notices. Your immune system, the quiet guardian inside you that watches for anything unusual, actually responds. It wakes up a particular kind of cell called a natural killer cell, which sounds dramatic, but is simply a cell whose job is to keep your inner world safe and balanced. Scientists first started paying attention to this in Japan, where forest bathing, they call it Shinrin-yoku, became something people practiced not just for pleasure, but for health. They took groups of people into the forest and measured things: cortisol levels, blood pressure, the activity of the immune system. After just a few hours under the trees, the numbers changed. The stress hormones went down. The immune cells went up. People slept better that night. And the effect lasted for days, sometimes weeks, even after they'd returned to their ordinary lives. You don't have to do anything special in the forest for this to happen. You don't have to meditate or walk a certain way or think the right thoughts. You just have to be there. You just have to breathe. The trees do the rest, releasing their invisible chemistry into the air around you like a slow, generous exhale. Beneath your feet, if you were standing in that forest right now, the soil would feel springy and soft, layered with decades of fallen needles and decomposed leaves. This layer is called the duff, and it's one of the most biologically rich environments on Earth. A single teaspoon of healthy forest soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on this planet. More than 8 billion individual living things: bacteria, fungi, archaea, tiny organisms called protozoa, all existing together in the dark, damp space between particles of Earth. This is not a frightening thought, even though it might sound like one at first. These are not harmful things. Most of them are ancient and peaceful, doing the slow, essential work of breaking down what has fallen so that it can become something new. They are the reason the forest floor smells the way it does. That deep, rich, almost sweet smell of earth after rain. That smell has a name too. It's called petrichor, and it comes from a molecule called geosmin, which is produced by soil bacteria. When rain falls and disturbs the soil, the geosmin rises into the air and your nose catches it. And something in your nervous system responds to it with a feeling that can only be described as relief. There is a theory, and it's a compelling one, that this feeling is ancient. Humans evolved in landscapes where rain meant water and water meant survival. Your attraction to the smell of rain might be millions of years old. It might be something your body remembers even though your mind doesn't. In this way, the microbes in the soil are not separate from you at all. They are part of a very long conversation between living things, a conversation that has been going on since long before there were words. If you'd like to share what kind of nature sounds help you relax most, feel free to leave a comment below. We'd love to know what your personal piece of quiet sounds like. The trees in that imaginary forest you're standing in right now, they are not alone either. Beneath each one, threading through the soil for hundreds of meters in every direction, is a network of fungal threads called mycelium. These threads are so fine that millions of them can fit inside a single gram of soil. They connect tree root to tree root, carrying water and nutrients and chemical signals back and forth between trees that might be standing so far apart that you'd never think they were in conversation. But they are. They have been, perhaps for centuries. This network has been called the Wood Wide Web, which is a charming name for something genuinely extraordinary. Mother trees, the oldest, largest trees in a forest, seem to send extra nutrients to younger saplings through these fungal connections, especially to their own offspring. Whether this is something we can truly call care is a question scientists still debate with great care and precision. But there is a real exchange happening. Something is moving between the trees, something that keeps the younger ones alive. You are lying in a soft place now, or nearly so, or at least you're settling toward it, toward the warm, quiet edge of sleep, where the day loses its sharp edges and everything becomes a little more like a dream. The forest is still there, at the edge of your awareness. The trees are still breathing. The fungi are still threading their slow silver paths through the dark soil. And somewhere in the cool air above the roots, the phyton sides are still drifting. Take another breath. Let it be slow and long and easy. The forest is doing its work. You are allowed to rest. You are still in the forest, but you've moved a little deeper now, past the place where the light turns golden and into the cooler shade beneath the oldest trees. The bark here is different, rougher, darker, furrowed, like the face of someone who has seen a great deal of weather and remained standing through all of it. Put your hand against the bark, if you like. It's real in the way that very old things are real, solid and patient and completely at peace with being exactly what it is. On the surface of that bark, invisible to you but present nonetheless, live thousands of microorganisms. Bacteria and fungi make their home in the microscopic grooves and crevices of tree bark, forming thin communities called biofilms. These films are not random. They are organized, layered, with different species living in different zones depending on how much moisture is present, how much light falls there, how acidic the surface is. Each species has its niche. Each one has its role. Some of these bacteria help protect the tree. They produce antibiotics, real, natural antibiotics, that keep harmful fungi and other pathogens from taking hold in wounded bark. This is, in fact, where many of our own medical antibiotics originally came from. Penicillin came from a mold. Streptomycin came from soil bacteria. The pharmaceutical shelf of the natural world is vast and largely still unexplored. Many of the medicines that have saved millions of human lives were discovered by scientists paying careful attention to the chemistry of living things. The forest floor is still beneath your feet, and somewhere very close, if you bent down and looked, you would find moss. Moss is one of the quietest, most unhurried plants in the world. It doesn't flower, it doesn't rush. It simply grows, millimeter by patient millimeter, spreading itself across rocks and roots and fallen logs in soft green carpets so dense that they hold water like a sponge. A patch of moss in a forest acts as a tiny reservoir, absorbing rainfall and releasing it slowly, keeping the soil moist for the organisms beneath. It creates a microclimate, a small zone of dampness and shadow in which dozens of other tiny creatures and microorganisms can exist. If you have ever placed your palm flat on a patch of moss, you may remember how it felt. Cool and gentle and slightly yielding, like pressing your hand against something that was completely indifferent to being touched. Not hostile, just absorbed in its own quiet existence. Moss doesn't need very much. It can dry out almost completely in a drought and come back to life when the rain returns. Some mosses have been revived after thousands of years frozen in ice. There is something deeply reassuring about a plant that is so patient, so unbothered by difficulty, so willing to simply wait. In the deep shade beneath a mossy log, you might find another world entirely: slime molds. These organisms are strange and beautiful and not quite like anything else on Earth. They are not fungi, though they were once classified that way. They are not animals, and they are not plants. They spend part of their life as single-celled organisms moving independently through the soil, and part of their life joining together into a single flowing body that moves slowly, impossibly, almost like thought, across surfaces in search of food. They can find the shortest path through a maze. They can solve problems. They do this without a brain, without a nervous system, without anything we would normally associate with intelligence. They simply flow toward what they need and away from what they don't. Scientists have studied slime molds with something close to wonder, and the more they look, the more remarkable the findings. When presented with a map of Tokyo's railway stations recreated in food sources, a slime mold recreated a network almost identical to the actual Tokyo subway system, efficiently, elegantly, without any planning at all. It just grew toward what was available in the most economical way possible. Life, it turns out, finds elegant solutions even without a mind to plan them. This might be a good moment to pause and let that sit with you. The idea that there is intelligence in the world that doesn't look anything like what we call intelligence. That there are solutions being found right now in the dark soil beneath your feet, without effort, without struggle, without anxiety. Just slow, patient, flowing motion toward what is needed. If you're enjoying this journey through the invisible world, don't forget to check the playlist. There are many more quiet evenings waiting there for you, each one a different corner of the natural world. The air in this deeper part of the forest is very still. Sound doesn't carry far here. The light is dim and green and diffuse, filtered through layers of canopy until it arrives at the forest floor, soft and directionless, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. This kind of light is called dappled, and there is research suggesting that dappled light, the kind that shifts and moves gently as leaves stir, is inherently calming to the human nervous system. Our eyes evolved to see in this light. It is the light of shelter, of safety, of the kind of place where you could rest without being seen. Your breath is slower now. Your body is remembering what it feels like to not be anywhere in particular, not trying to do anything in particular, just existing, the way the moss exists, the way the slime mold flows, the way the mycelium threads quietly through the dark. There is no urgency here. The forest has been here for a long time and will be here for a long time after tonight. It is not going anywhere, and neither are you. The forest gives way, gradually, to a different kind of quiet. You've been walking, not in any purposeful direction, just following the soft ground. And now the trees have thinned and the air has changed again. You can smell water, not rain, not damp earth, but water moving. A stream somewhere nearby, making its way over stones with a sound that's halfway between music and breathing. You find it, a small stream, perhaps a meter wide, running clear and quick over a bed of smooth gray stones. The stones are so clean, they look polished, although nothing polished them except the water and the time. On the rocks, just beneath the surface, you can see what looks like a green-brown coating, a thin, slick film that makes the stones slippery if you step on them. This film has a name, periphyton, or more simply, biofilm. It is a community of algae, bacteria, and other microorganisms living together in a thin, structured layer on the rock surface. Biofilms are everywhere in the natural world. Your teeth develop a biofilm every day. You know it as dental plaque. The inside of your digestive tract is lined with biofilms of helpful bacteria. The roots of plants are coated in microbial biofilms that help them absorb nutrients. Almost every surface in the natural world that has water and some source of energy is eventually colonized by biofilm. This is not a dirty or troubling thing. It is simply life doing what life does, finding surfaces, establishing communities, doing chemistry. The stream bacteria are doing important chemistry right now as you watch the water move past. They are breaking down leaves and organic matter that has fallen into the stream. They are cycling nitrogen and phosphorus from the water back into the food chain. They are the base of a food web that includes the tiny invertebrates clinging to the undersides of stones, which are themselves food for the small fish that dart in the shadows of the deeper pools, which are food for the heron that stand very still in the shallows just downstream. You can't see the heron from here, but it's there if you listen. Herons are remarkably patient hunters. They can stand motionless in shallow water for half an hour or more, watching for the slight shadow and movement that means a fish is within reach. They don't think about this. They don't rehearse it or worry about whether they'll be successful or compare themselves to other herons. They simply stand and wait. And then, when the moment arrives, they move. Water carries microbes the way wind carries seeds. A river flowing through a healthy forest picks up soil bacteria from its banks, fungal spores from the leaf litter, algae from the rocks, and carries all of them downstream, distributing them across the landscape. When a river floods, it spreads this invisible cargo across its floodplain, seeding the soil with microorganisms that will break down organic matter and return nutrients to the earth. This is one of the reasons floodplain soils are so rich. It's not just the silt that floods deposit. It's also the biology, the invisible freight of living things that every flood carries with it. The water in this stream has come from somewhere. Rain that fell on the hills above, percolating down through soil, spending weeks or months moving slowly through layers of rock and earth before emerging here as a spring, then flowing together with other springs to form this small stream. That journey through the soil is a form of filtration, not just physical filtration, but biological filtration. The soil bacteria and fungi process the water as it passes through them, removing pollutants, breaking down organic compounds, performing the slow chemistry that makes the water clean. The soil is, among many other things, a living filter. Leave a comment if you find yourself drawn to the sound of water. It's one of the things our listeners mention most often, and it always makes us smile to read. You are sitting by the stream now, or at least that's where your imagination has placed you. The stones are a little cool and solid beneath you. The sound of the water is very present, not loud, but filling the quiet in a way that makes the quiet feel complete rather than empty. You don't need to listen to it exactly. It's just there, the way background music is there, setting the tone of something without demanding attention. Your microbiome, the community of microorganisms living on and inside your body, is not entirely separate from the world around you. Every time you drink from a natural water source, walk barefoot on soil, eat vegetables that were grown in the ground, or simply breathe deeply in a forest, you are receiving microbial immigrants from the natural world into your own inner ecosystem. Most of these are neutral or beneficial. Many of them have been living alongside human bodies for millions of years. The human gut contains approximately 38 trillion microbial cells. More, some estimates suggest, than there are human cells in the entire body. This community is called the gut microbiome, and it does an extraordinary range of things. It digests food, synthesizes vitamins, trains the immune system, protects against harmful pathogens, and communicates with the brain via the vagus nerve in ways that influence mood, anxiety, and cognitive function. The gut, scientists now say, is not just an organ for processing food. It is a second nervous system, a second immune system, and in some sense, a second mind. Rest in that idea for a moment. You are not just one thing. You are a community. Your body is a world, and the living things inside that world are part of what makes you who you are. The stream is still there behind you, its voice fading a little as you move along the bank and find a wide, flat stone to sit on at the water's edge. From here, you can see farther, out across a meadow on the opposite bank, pale gold in the late afternoon light, full of grasses and wildflowers that bend and recover in the light wind. The meadow is a different kind of quiet than the forest. It's more open, more alive with movement. Things are always happening at the surface of a meadow. A butterfly landing, a bee leaving, the slow lean of a grass stem before it straightens again. The soil beneath a meadow is different from forest soil, though both are alive with microbial communities. Meadow soil tends to be drier at the surface and richer in a different set of bacteria, ones that thrive in more aerated, more sun-exposed conditions. Some of these bacteria fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, converting the inert gas that makes up most of the air into forms that plants can use. This process is one of the most important chemical reactions in the living world. Without nitrogen fixation by soil bacteria, plants could not build proteins. And without proteins, there would be no complex life on Earth. The nitrogen fixers are among the most ancient and essential organisms on the planet, and they do their work invisibly, continuously, without any recognition or interruption. Some plants have made special arrangements with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Legumes, clover, peas, beans, vetches develop small nodules on their roots that house colonies of a bacterium called rhizobium. The plant provides the bacteria with sugars. The bacteria provide the plant with nitrogen. This is a mutualistic relationship, meaning both partners benefit. It is one of the most successful partnerships in evolutionary history, and it's been operating for approximately 60 million years. The clover in that meadow is, right now, hosting billions of bacteria in its roots. It has been doing so, in some form, since before there were mammals. Clover flowers are small and round and white or pinkish, and if you've ever noticed how bees find them irresistible, it's partly because of their nectar and partly because of their scent. A soft, almost milky sweetness that's easy to miss if you're walking past, but becomes unmistakable if you bend down close. The scent is produced by the flower for the bee as a signal and an invitation. But it's also a pleasant accident for humans who have no role in the transaction and yet are welcomed by it anyway. The meadow grass has its own microbiome. Each blade of grass is coated in a thin community of bacteria and fungi called the phyllosphere, the community that lives on leaf surfaces. The phyllosphere is one of the largest microbial habitats on Earth. It's estimated that the total surface area of all plant leaves on the planet is roughly 1 billion square kilometers, and almost every centimeter of it is home to microorganisms. These surface-dwelling bacteria and fungi help protect the plant from pathogens, help it manage water, and in some cases produce chemical compounds that repel insects or attract pollinators. When you walk through long grass and the blades brush against your bare legs or arms, you're picking up some of these microorganisms on your skin. Most of them will survive there only briefly before being outcompeted by your skin's own resident microbial community. But the contact is real, and it happens constantly in outdoor spaces. Every surface you touch, every breath of outdoor air you inhale, every patch of soil you kneel on is a microbial exchange between your body and the living world around it. Your skin microbiome, the community of bacteria, fungi, and viruses that live on the surface of your skin, is as individual as a fingerprint. It varies from person to person and from place to place on the same body. The bacteria on your forehead are different from those on your forearm, which are different again from those between your toes. These communities are stable and largely benign. They form a protective barrier against more harmful microorganisms, and they communicate with the immune cells just beneath the skin, helping to calibrate immune responses and keep inflammation in check. Studies have shown that people who spend more time outdoors, in gardens, on farms, in forests, tend to have more diverse skin and gut microbiomes than people who spend most of their time indoors in highly sanitized environments. And a more diverse microbiome, the research suggests, is generally a healthier one. Diversity gives the community resilience. It means there are more different species doing more different jobs, more redundancy in the system, more ability to recover from disruption. If you haven't yet checked the playlist, there are several other stories there that explore different corners of the quiet, natural world. Each one is a gentle place to spend an evening. The light over the meadow is starting to soften. The sun is lower, the shadows longer, and the color of the grass has shifted from bright gold to something warmer and deeper, almost amber. The wind has stilled. The bees have begun to return to wherever bees go at the end of the day, which is mostly into the flowers themselves. Many bees sleep inside flowers, tucked between the petals, curled and still while the night comes down around them. You are warm, and the stone beneath you is warm too, having held the sun's heat all afternoon. There is something deeply restful about warm stone. It gives back the warmth slowly, steadily, without doing anything at all. You can close your eyes here for a moment if you want to. The meadow will still be there when you open them. With your eyes still soft and half closed, you become aware of sound without looking for it. The stream behind you still murmuring, the dry rustle of grass seeds in their cases, and from somewhere very close, a sound so small and continuous that you almost mistake it for a sensation rather than a sound. Buzzing. The bees are still here, even as the light fades. The last few workers are making their final rounds before dark, moving from flower to flower with the efficient, unhurried focus that seems to be a bee's natural mode of being. They don't waste motion. They don't hover in place, considering their options. They move directly from one flower to the next, along routes they have memorized through days of repetition. Their flight paths so consistent that experienced beekeepers can sometimes predict which flowers a particular hive will favor. The relationship between bees and flowers is one of the most well-studied examples of coevolution on Earth. Flowers evolved their colors, shapes, and scents over millions of years in response to the sensory systems of the insects that pollinate them. Bees can see ultraviolet light, which humans cannot. So many flowers have patterns in their petals that are invisible to us but visible to bees. Runways of ultraviolet markings that guide the bee toward the nectar at the flower's center, called nectar guides or bee guides. A plain yellow flower to a bee is a dramatically patterned landing pad, and the flowers are guided by the bees in turn. The flowers that were pollinated most successfully left the most seeds, and those seeds became the next generation of flowers. Over millions of generations, flowers have become, in a very real sense, shaped by bee preferences. The bees and the flowers have been making each other for a very long time. The soil beneath the meadow flowers is home to a particular kind of bacteria worth lingering on. Mycobacterium vaccae. It's a soil bacterium, common, widespread, found wherever there is healthy, organic, rich soil. And it has been the subject of considerable research in recent years because of its surprising effects on mammalian brains. Studies in mice found that injecting them with this bacterium, or even just allowing them to inhale it, resulted in significantly lower anxiety and higher levels of serotonin in the brain. The mice that were exposed to Mzwakhe ran mazes more quickly, showed less stress behavior, and recovered more easily from stressful situations. The mechanism appears to involve serotonin, the same neurotransmitter targeted by many antidepressant medications. The bacterium seems to trigger a mild immune response that indirectly increases serotonin production in the brain. It's possible that humans, too, experience this effect when they dig in the soil with their bare hands, or walk barefoot on unpaved ground, or simply breathe the air of a healthy outdoor environment. The gardener who reports feeling calmer after an hour of weeding might be describing exactly this: the quiet antidepressant effect of ancient soil bacteria entering the body through breath and touch. There is something both humbling and comforting about this idea, that the peace you feel outdoors is not only in your mind, it is also, literally, in your blood and breath, carried there by organisms that have been part of the human environment for as long as there have been humans. The boundary between your inner world and the outer one is softer than it seems. Feel free to leave a like if you're finding tonight's story settling you into a quieter place. It means a great deal to know these words are useful. You are lying back on the warm stone now, or at least the version of you that lives in this story is. The sky above the meadow is very large. It is the color of things just before nightfall, that particular shade of deep, clear blue that isn't quite day and isn't quite dark, and that seems to exist only for a few minutes, just long enough to notice and then be gone. In that blue, 2 or 3 stars have appeared already, more felt than seen, their light very faint and steady. The microorganisms in the air around you are different at different altitudes. Near the ground, there are many bacteria and fungal spores lifted by wind from the soil and plants, floating at low altitudes for hours or days before settling again. Higher up, in the clouds and above them, there are far fewer, but they are not absent. Clouds form around particles of dust and soot and, yes, around bacteria, which act as condensation nuclei. Rain begins as water vapor condensing onto something, and sometimes that something is a living cell. It's possible that some of the rain that falls in a forest is, in a very small and technical sense, made of life. The evening is coming on fully now, and the meadow has taken on that hushed, held quality that only happens at dusk, as though the world has paused before the full arrival of night. The birds have mostly quieted. The bees are gone. The grasses stand still in the cooling air, and the flowers have closed, drawing their petals inward the way sleeping people draw in their arms. Flowers that close at night are doing something purposeful. They're protecting their pollen and nectar from dew and from night insects that, unlike bees, aren't efficient pollinators. The mechanism that closes them is called nyctinasty, movement triggered by the change in light. Some flowers close so completely that rain can't penetrate. Some, like wood sorrel, fold their leaves down as well as their petals so that the whole plant tucks itself in for the night. This folding is not just protective. Research suggests it also helps regulate the plant's temperature, keeping it slightly warmer on cold nights. The soil, too, changes its behavior at night. Many of the chemical exchanges between plant roots and soil microorganisms are different in the dark. Some plants release more root exudates, the sugary fluids that roots secrete into the soil to attract and nourish their microbial partners, at night than during the day. This is partly because photosynthesis stops at dark, and the plant can redirect resources that were going into making sugars toward other functions. The underground world in some ways is more active at night than during the day. Earthworms emerge at night. They come to the surface when the ground is damp and dark, moving across the soil surface to reach new areas or to find fallen leaves, which they drag underground and consume. An earthworm digests soil as it moves through it, passing the material through its body and depositing it as castings, small pellets of processed soil that are significantly richer in nutrients than the surrounding earth. Charles Darwin, who spent many years studying earthworms with great patience and affection, estimated that in a single year, the earthworms in a typical English meadow would turn over enough soil to bury the surface entirely to a depth of several centimeters. Darwin called them the most important animals on Earth, which is a striking thing for a naturalist who had spent years studying the extraordinary diversity of life on the Galapagos Islands. But he understood what the earthworms were doing, creating the conditions for everything else. They aerate the soil, allowing water to penetrate. They mix the surface layers with the deeper ones, distributing nutrients. They carry microorganisms down from the surface into the deeper soil, seeding new communities in places they couldn't reach on their own. They are, in their quiet, unhurried way, architects. Night falls completely now, and the meadow has disappeared into darkness. But the darkness is not empty or still. The soil beneath you is full of motion, the ceaseless activity of organisms too small to see, doing the chemistry of life, breaking, building, cycling, connecting. This is the normal condition of a healthy earth. It is always alive. It never truly rests. Above the meadow, the night insects have begun to emerge. Moths, most of them pale and softly furred, they drift through the dark like small pieces of moonlight. Many moths are pollinators, visiting white and pale-colored flowers that are visible in the dark and that produce their scent most strongly at night. Jasmine does this. Night-blooming cereus does this. Honeysuckle releases its sweetest fragrance after sunset, specifically for the moths. Some flowers have been shaped by millennia of moth visits, just as other flowers were shaped by bees. The collaboration between flowers and their pollinators is so ancient and so deep that when one species disappears, the other often declines as well. There are orchids in Madagascar that can only be pollinated by a single species of moth, a hawk moth, with a proboscis so long that it seems improbable, nearly a foot long, long enough to reach the nectar at the bottom of the orchid's extremely deep flower tube. Darwin predicted the existence of this moth before it was discovered, based only on the shape of the orchid. He wrote that some insect must have that proboscis, must exist somewhere, even though no one had seen it. He was right. The moth was found years after his death. If you're drifting a little now, that's exactly right. Let the darkness of the meadow come a little closer. Let the sound of your breathing be the only sound in the room. There is rain coming. You can feel it before it arrives. A change in the air, a drop in pressure, a slight metallic quality to the breeze that makes the nostrils flare slightly. The clouds that have been building on the horizon all evening are moving now, darkening the stars as they come, and the trees at the edge of the meadow are beginning to move in the first gusts of a wind that still smells of distance and weather. The first drops are wide and sparse and land on the stone beside you with a sound like someone turning pages slowly. Then more and closer together, and then the rain is fully here, not heavy, not dramatic, just steady and comprehensive, touching every surface with its soft percussion. The meadow grass has flattened slightly in the rain. The stone beneath you is darkening, a slow spreading stain of wet. Rain does something extraordinary to the microbial world. The impact of each raindrop on a patch of soil creates a tiny aerosol, a cloud of microscopic droplets flung upward and outward from the point of impact. These aerosols carry with them whatever was on the soil surface: mineral particles, organic compounds, and inevitably microorganisms. Bacteria, fungal spores, and archaea lifted by the rain travel in these droplets for minutes or hours, sometimes over considerable distances. The smell of rain, that geosmin we spoke of earlier, is carried this way, distributed by the physics of falling water. This process is one of the mechanisms by which microorganisms disperse across a landscape. A single rainstorm can deposit bacteria from one side of a field onto another, seeding new populations, increasing diversity, carrying microbial immigrants from distant environments. Rain is not just water. It is a vehicle. The water that falls here tonight will, over the coming days and weeks, move downward through the soil. As it does, it will carry dissolved organic matter, nutrients from fallen leaves, and decomposing matter into the deeper layers where tree roots reach. The soil bacteria and fungi it encounters on the way will process it, extract what they need, and pass the rest along, changing the water's chemistry as it moves. By the time it reaches the water table, the water will be very different from what fell from the sky. It will have been processed by hundreds of species over the course of its journey, filtered and transformed and enriched. When you drink water from a spring, you are drinking water that has been processed by the living earth. You are drinking the product of microbial labor, water that has been made clean, not by chemicals, but by biology over time in the dark. The rain is slowing now. The drops are gentler, less frequent, more thoughtful. This is the kind of rain that seems almost considerate, soft enough to sit in if you wanted to. The smell is extraordinary. Earth and leaves and water and something green and alive that doesn't have a name exactly, but that you recognize. Leave a comment below if rain is one of your favorite sounds to fall asleep to. It's one of ours. Puddles are forming in the low places of the meadow, still and reflective as mirrors. In these temporary pools, even in the few hours they exist, life will establish itself. Bacteria from the soil will colonize the water within minutes. Algae, if there's enough light, will begin to grow. Small invertebrates, rotifers, tardigrades, that have been waiting in a state of suspended animation in the dry soil will rehydrate and begin to move the moment the water touches them. Tardigrades in particular are remarkable. They can survive complete desiccation for decades, as well as temperatures from near absolute zero to well above boiling, as well as radiation levels that would kill almost any other organism. When water returns, they simply resume. They are perhaps the most resilient animals on Earth, and they are living in your garden, your local park, on the moss growing on your windowsill right now. The idea that life is this persistent, this inventive, this determined, it's strangely comforting when you let it settle. Life finds a way, as the saying goes, but what the saying doesn't quite capture is how quietly and without fuss life usually does this. The tardigrade doesn't struggle to survive a drought. It simply waits. It doesn't experience the waiting as suffering. It just pauses in its microscopic way and resumes when conditions improve. The rain has passed. The night air after rain is cleaner, sharper, more itself. The clouds have broken, and stars are appearing in the gaps between them, steady and bright. The meadow smells of all the things the rain disturbed and lifted, and the stone you've been sitting on has been washed and is cold now. So you've moved, in this story, to a drier place, a slight hollow in the ground near the trees that smells of leaf mold and is sheltered from the wind. The stars are very clear tonight. There are many more of them visible after rain, when the dust and pollen that normally scatter light have been washed from the air. Looking at stars is one of the few activities that reliably slows human thought. Something about the scale of what you're looking at seems to interrupt the normal stream of worrying and planning and rehearsing. The brain quiets. The breath lengthens. The body takes its first real rest of the day. The light reaching you from the stars has been traveling for a very long time. The nearest star beyond our sun, Proxima Centauri, is 4.2 light years away, meaning its light takes more than 4 years to arrive here. The stars you can see with the naked eye span distances from a few light years to a few thousand light years. Some of the stars you're looking at may no longer exist. The light is still traveling, carrying its message across the dark, but the source might have changed. In the organic molecules that float through space between the stars, the vast, cold, diffuse clouds of gas and dust called nebulae, scientists have found complex carbon compounds, amino acids, the building blocks of proteins and other molecules associated with life. These molecules form without any biological help, using only the chemistry of elements and the energy of ultraviolet light. They drift in space for millions of years, and some of them fall to Earth as components of meteorites and cosmic dust. The question of whether life on Earth was seeded, at least in part, by organic molecules from space is one that scientists have not yet fully resolved. Some researchers believe it's plausible. Others are cautious. But the molecules are real, and they are there. The earth beneath your hollow is a little damp from the rain, and you can feel the cold of it through your clothes. But there's something good about cold earth. It's grounding in the most literal sense, a reminder of density and permanence, of a world that was here before you and will be here after. You are small against this ground, but that's not a frightening kind of small. It's the kind of small that is also a relief. You don't have to hold everything up. The earth does that. The microorganisms in the soil around you are preparing in their own way for the rest of the night. Bacteria regulate their activity depending on temperature and humidity. Many of them slow down in the cold reducing their metabolism, producing less, moving less, waiting for the warmth to return. This is not hibernation in the way bears hibernate. It's a more continuous, gradual modulation, a rheostat rather than an on-off switch. The community remains present, just quieter. You can check the playlist anytime you'd like, more nights like this one. There are stories there for rain, for forests, for the sea, for every kind of night sky. Fungi, too, are active tonight, even in the cold. Fungal hyphae, the individual threads that make up the mycelium, continue to grow through soil even at quite low temperatures, threading their way between soil particles, branching, anastomosing, which means fusing with other branches of their own network, extending the web of connection that underlies the visible world. A single fungal organism can cover hectares of soil, all of it genetically identical, all of it in communication with itself, through chemical signals that pass through the cytoplasm of the connected cells. The largest known organism on Earth is a fungus, Armillaria ostoyi, the honey fungus, in the Malheur National Forest in Oregon, covering approximately 9.6 square kilometers and estimated to be several thousand years old. When you hold that in your mind, a single organism 9 kilometers wide, and then consider that it exists mostly underground, mostly invisible, quietly weaving the forest together, it becomes easier to understand the sense that the world is not just more interesting than we knew. It is more alive, more connected, and more intelligent in its way than we had imagined. The night deepens. The cold has a presence now, not uncomfortable, just definite. The kind of cold that makes the edges of things feel more precise. You can hear more in this cold night quiet than you could earlier. The distant call of a tawny owl, low and repeated. The creak of a tree settling. The small, sharp sounds of things moving through the leaf litter. A mouse, probably. A wood mouse, russet-furred, large-eyed, moving through the dark world with the complete confidence of something perfectly adapted to its environment. The wood mouse's gut is full of its own microbiome. Every mammal carries its own community of gut bacteria shaped by its diet, its habitat, its family lineage, and the environment it lives in. Different species of mice living in different habitats have measurably different gut microbiomes. And when a mouse changes its habitat, moves from a forest to a farm, say, or from wild ground to a laboratory, its microbiome changes too, within weeks. The community reorganizes itself in response to the new environment, adding species that thrive in the new conditions, losing ones that no longer have what they need. Humans show the same plasticity. Studies of people who moved from rural to urban environments found that their gut microbiomes began to change within a month of the move, becoming less diverse as their diets changed and their contact with natural environments decreased. Studies of people who moved in the opposite direction, from cities to farms or forests, found increases in diversity, particularly in the kinds of bacteria associated with immune regulation and reduced inflammation. There is a concept in microbiology called the hygiene hypothesis, and also a more nuanced successor to it called the old friends hypothesis. The original hygiene hypothesis, proposed in the 1980s, suggested that the dramatic increases in allergies and autoimmune diseases in wealthy countries since the mid-20th century were connected to increased cleanliness, that children who grew up in very sanitized environments weren't being exposed to the microorganisms their immune systems needed in order to calibrate properly. The old friend's hypothesis refines this. It's not about cleanliness per se, but about exposure to the specific organisms that humans evolved alongside over millions of years. Not the dangerous pathogens that cause cholera or typhoid, but the ancient, harmless bacteria and parasites of soil and untreated water, organisms that have been part of the human microbial environment for so long that the immune system has learned to work with them, to use them as signals, to tolerate them. When these old friends disappear, the immune system becomes dysregulated, still vigilant, still active, but without appropriate targets. It begins to over-respond to harmless things, pollen, food proteins, the body's own tissues. This may be part of the explanation for why rates of allergies, asthma, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, and other immune-related conditions are so much higher in wealthy, highly urbanized countries than in rural or less industrialized ones. It's not that clean water and sanitation are bad. They save millions of lives. It's that something else has been lost in the process, something subtle and old. The constant, gentle exposure to the microbial world that used to be part of every human life. The owl calls again, from a different direction this time. It has moved silently through the dark. Owls can locate prey in complete darkness using only their hearing. Their facial disc acts as a parabolic reflector, funneling sound toward their asymmetrically placed ears, which are positioned differently on each side of the head so that the brain can calculate the exact three-dimensional location of a sound source. They don't need light. They need only to listen. Leave a like if this story is carrying you towards sleep. That quiet gesture means the world to us. You are listening too, but softly, not for anything in particular, just for the texture of the night, the sounds that are there, the silences between them. Your breathing has slowed without you noticing it's slow. Your heartbeat is steady and unhurried. Your body is doing what bodies are supposed to do at this hour, stepping back from the day, releasing its held attention, beginning the long, important work of repair and rest. There are things happening in your body right now, quiet, invisible things that have been shaped by billions of years of evolution. Your brain, as you drift towards sleep, is beginning to clear the metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Cerebrospinal fluid moves through channels in the brain tissue, washing away proteins and cellular debris that have been building up all day. This process, the glymphatic system, is most active during deep sleep. It is one of the reasons sleep is not optional, not just rest, but biological necessity. The gut bacteria are adjusting their populations for the night. Different species of gut bacteria have circadian rhythms, daily cycles of activity that are loosely synchronized with your own. Some species multiply most rapidly during the day when food is being processed. Others are more active at night. The entire community cycles with you through the hours, through the seasons, through the changes in your diet and your environment. Your microbiome has a clock. It follows the rhythm of your life. The skin bacteria are also in their nightly mode. During the day, some skin bacteria produce compounds that protect the skin from ultraviolet light, tiny sunscreens manufactured by living things. At night, with the UV gone, these same bacteria shift toward producing other compounds, antimicrobial peptides, compounds that repair the skin barrier, chemical signals that communicate with immune cells beneath the surface. The skin is not just a wall, it is a managed border staffed by living organisms that adjust their behavior with the hour. And the gut-brain axis, the communication pathway between the gut microbiome and the brain, which runs through the vagus nerve and through the bloodstream, is still active. Gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and many others. They produce short-chain fatty acids that cross the blood-brain barrier and influence brain function. They produce immune signals that modulate inflammation, which in turn affects mood and cognition. A significant portion of the serotonin in the human body is made in the gut, not the brain, and that production is influenced by the bacteria living there. This means that the state of your gut microbiome has a real, measurable influence on how you feel, not just physically, but emotionally. People with disrupted gut microbiomes caused by antibiotic treatment or poor diet or chronic stress often report increased anxiety and lower mood, independent of any other factors. Restoring the microbiome through diverse plant-rich food, time in nature, reduced stress, often brings mood improvements along with it. The meadow and the forest and the rain-washed stone were not just pleasant experiences. They were, in a real biological sense, nourishing. Your body took something from each of them, something invisible, ancient, necessary. And now, as you settle toward sleep, that nourishment is still being processed, still being integrated, still doing its quiet work. The playlist has more of these nights waiting for you, each one an invitation to a different corner of the living world. It's there, whenever you need it. The cold outside is more definite now, but inside, the inside of wherever you are, the inside of your own warmth, it is exactly the right temperature. Your body is good at this, maintaining its precise internal climate, regardless of what the air around it is doing. Your skin surface might be cool, but your core is steady, your blood is warm, your organs are doing their night work in a constant, comfortable heat. You are, right now, a small, warm world containing multitudes, perfectly regulated, completely at rest. At some point in the deep middle of the night, not yet, but coming, the dew will form. It forms when the ground and the surfaces of plants cool below the dew point, the temperature at which moisture in the air condenses into liquid water. Dew doesn't fall from the sky. It forms on surfaces from the air itself, making visible the water that was already there, invisible, suspended in every breath you take. In the morning, the meadow grasses will carry it in beads at their tips, each bead a tiny lens, focusing the first light of day into a single bright point. Before you can walk through the meadow without wetting your shoes, the dew will be there, cold and heavy and carrying, even in those small drops, a community of microorganisms. Dew picks up bacteria and fungal spores from the leaf surfaces it condenses onto. It carries them briefly before evaporating back into the air as the morning warms. This is another small mechanism of dispersal, another way the invisible world moves. The first light comes slowly. You can tell it's coming before you can see it. A slight warming in the quality of the dark, a change in the bird sounds, the robin that always sings before the others. The robin's song in the pre-dawn is one of the most remarkable sounds in the natural world. Thin, complex, plaintive, and completely confident. The robin sings before there's any light to see by, navigating by a kind of internal clock that is more precise than most instruments. Bird microbiomes have been studied with growing interest in recent years. Like mammals, birds carry complex communities of bacteria and fungi in their digestive tracts, and the composition of these communities varies by habitat and diet. Birds living in diverse wild habitats tend to have more diverse gut microbiomes than birds living in urban environments, and the microbiome influences bird health in ways that parallel its influence on mammalian health: immune function, response to parasites, even song complexity. There is some evidence that the microbiome of a nestling, the community established in the first weeks of life, has long-lasting effects on its health and behavior as an adult. The bacteria passed from parent to chick through feeding and proximity are part of a biological inheritance that runs alongside the genetic one. A thrush passes not just its genes to its offspring, but its microbial community too. This transmission of microbiomes is not unique to birds. Human infants acquire their first gut bacteria during birth, when they pass through the birth canal and are exposed to the mother's vaginal microbiome. Babies born by cesarean section who miss this exposure tend to have less diverse gut microbiomes in infancy, at least initially. Breastfeeding also transfers bacteria. Human milk contains not just nutrients and antibodies, but living bacteria, including several species of bifidobacterium that colonize the infant gut and help establish the immune system. The early microbial community a child receives is, in some senses, a gift, a biological inheritance from the mother's body and the environment she lives in. There is a certain kind of magic in this. If magic means something that happens without our noticing and that shapes us in ways we didn't know. We don't choose our first gut bacteria. We don't know they're being given to us, but they become part of us, part of how our bodies understand the world, part of the immune calibration that will influence our health for the rest of our lives. The sky in the east has now a barely there lightning, not yet color, just a reduction in the density of dark. The stars in that direction have become less bright, not gone, but receding. The night is not ending yet, not nearly, but the suggestion of morning is there, very faint, at the far edge of the sky. You are deeply, comfortably arranged somewhere soft and warm. Your eyes are heavy in a way that is entirely comfortable. There is nothing pressing on you right now. Nothing needs your attention tonight. There is a kind of tree, not a dramatic tree, not a towering ancient, just a common tree, the kind you might walk past without looking up, that carries within it something astonishing. The horse chestnut is a broad, generous tree with large palmate leaves and candles of white flowers in spring, and in autumn it produces the conkers that children have been collecting and threading and playing with for centuries. Unremarkable, perhaps, in a hedgerow or a park. But its relationship with the fungi in the soil around it is extraordinary. The horse chestnut, like most trees, forms mycorrhizal associations, partnerships with root fungi that are as old as land plants themselves. The fungi colonize the tree's roots, threading their own hyphae into the root cells, giving the tree access to a vastly expanded network for absorbing water and minerals. In exchange, the tree provides the fungi with sugars. Up to 30% of all the sugar a tree produces through photosynthesis can go directly to its fungal partners. This is not a small gift. This is the majority of the tree's energy output. Without mycorrhizal fungi, most trees cannot survive. Experiments in which trees were grown in sterilized soil with the fungi removed, showed that the trees struggled and often died, even in the presence of adequate water and nutrients. The fungi are not optional extras. They are part of what a tree is. What makes this even more remarkable is that the fungi are not species-specific. A single fungal network in a forest may be connected to dozens of different species of tree simultaneously. Oak and beech and birch and pine, all linked through the same underground web, all exchanging nutrients and signals. This community of trees and fungi is sometimes called a mycorrhizal network, and some ecologists believe it functions in ways that we would recognize as collaborative, with resources moving toward the trees that need them most, modulated by the health of the whole. Whether this constitutes something like decision-making or communication in any meaningful sense is a question that scientists debate with great care. Plants and fungi lack nervous systems. There is no brain, no intention, in any sense we understand. But there is, undeniably, responsiveness. The system responds to inputs, adjusts its outputs, changes its behavior in ways that look, from the outside, like intelligent management of resources. Your own body is doing something similar right now. Your immune system, made up of dozens of specialized cell types in constant communication with each other and with the microbiome, is modulating inflammation, managing resources, responding to signals from the gut, from the skin, from the lungs. It has no central coordinator, no single cell that makes decisions. It is a distributed system, as the mycorrhizal network is a distributed system, responsive and adaptive and intelligent in its own way, without a brain. If this story is resting you gently toward sleep, do leave a comment when you wake. It's always lovely to know where you were when the words carried you off. The sky above the meadow is getting lighter, very slowly. The horizon is the color of pale stone. A few birds have begun, not the full chorus yet, just the first tentative soloists. The robin, then a wren, then a blackbird, each song distinct and somehow appropriate to the moment. Birdsong is not random noise. It encodes information, territory, readiness to mate, species identity, individual identity. Studies have shown that individual birds have unique voices, and that other birds can recognize and remember those voices. A blackbird on its territory can learn the voices of its neighbors and adjust its behavior depending on whether a singing bird is a familiar neighbor or a stranger. Strangers are more threatening. Known neighbors are, by experience, predictable. This is not so different from what you do. You know the voices of the people you love. You can recognize them from a word, from a breath, from the particular rhythm of how they knock on a door. These recognitions are old and deep and make you feel, without analysis, at home or not at home, safe or not safe. The birds and you are doing the same thing, using sound to know where you are in relation to the rest of the world. The birdsong is building now, moving toward the full morning chorus that will come with the first light. There is a moment, if you're awake to hear it, when the sound tips from a few individual singers into something that covers the whole landscape, every hedgerow and woodland edge contributing, every bird adding its thread to a fabric of sound that is one of the most beautiful things the natural world produces, the dawn chorus. The microbiome of the soil produces its own kind of chorus, not sound, but chemistry, a constant layered production of compounds that together constitute the smell of healthy earth. Geosmin is there, and petrichor, and the sulfur compounds produced by decomposing organic matter, and the slightly sweet smell of fungal metabolites, and dozens of other molecules, all mixing in proportions that vary with the season, the moisture, the temperature, the composition of the community. The smell of soil is not one smell, but a symphony, and it is different in spring and autumn, in wet and dry, in old forest and new meadow. Humans are remarkably sensitive to the smell of geosmin, far more sensitive than to most other compounds. We can detect it at concentrations of a few parts per trillion. This is very unusual. Our sense of smell is generally not that acute for most compounds. The specific sensitivity to geosmin suggests that it was evolutionarily important for us to be able to detect it, perhaps as a cue for the presence of water, or for the kind of rich, organic soil where food grows. Our attraction to the smell of rain may be, in part, an ancient signal that we are near something we need. The garden, if you have one, or if you can imagine one, is a place where this ancient relationship plays out every day. Digging in garden soil exposes you to the full community of soil microorganisms, bacteria including Mycobacterium vaccae, fungi including mycorrhizal species, archaea, protozoa, all of them entering your lungs with the disturbed air, and your skin through tiny cuts and abrasions. This is not a reason not to garden. It is a reason to garden more, to let yourself be in contact with soil, to let the contact be real and unhurried. Studies of children raised on farms or who spent significant time in contact with farm animals and soil in early childhood show consistently lower rates of allergic disease, asthma, and autoimmune conditions than children raised in urban environments with little outdoor contact. This is the old friends hypothesis in action. The farm children received their early microbial education from the rich, diverse environment around them, and their immune systems were calibrated by that diversity. In some research programs, scientists have begun to explore whether microbial extracts, essentially concentrated preparations of soil bacteria or farm microorganisms, could be used therapeutically to reduce inflammation and treat autoimmune conditions. Early results are promising. The ancient medicine of the soil is being rediscovered, tested and measured, and it is holding up. You have been breathing this story for a while now, and your body knows what to do with it. The muscles along your jaw and neck have let go. The small tension behind your eyes has softened. Your hands, wherever they are heavy and still. Check the playlist if you'd like. There are other evenings waiting there, other quiet worlds to enter on nights when sleep feels far away. The morning light is fully here now in our story, though in your room it is still night, or very nearly. In the meadow, the dew is on every surface, and the grass is bowed under it, and the air has that crystalline freshness of the first moments after sunrise, when the shadows are long and blue, and the colors of things are more intense than they will be at any other point in the day. A spider's web, beaded with dew, is stretched between two stalks of grass. Each bead holds a perfect small reflection of the sky. The spider has been here all night. She made the web in the evening, repaired it in the dark, and has been waiting, still patient, in the exact center for the light to bring the insects that will come with the warmth. The web is made of several kinds of silk, each with different properties. Some strong and stiff for the spokes, some elastic and sticky for the spiral threads. Spider silk, weight for weight, is stronger than steel and more flexible than rubber. Scientists have studied it for decades, trying to replicate it, so far without complete success. The spider makes it effortlessly from proteins from her own body. The spider's relationship with bacteria is, like so many things in the living world, more complicated and more interesting than it first appears. The silk ducts through which she produces her silk contain bacteria that have been found to play a role in preventing the silk from becoming contaminated with pathogenic microorganisms. The bacteria produce antifungal and antibacterial compounds that protect the precious silk. In return, they live in the warm, nutrient-rich environment of the silk glands. This is another mutualism, another partnership so old and so integrated that neither partner would be quite the same without the other. Most of the partnerships between large organisms and their microbial communities are like this: old, integrated, invisible, and essential. The mitochondria in your cells, the structures that produce the energy that runs every biological process in your body, were once free-living bacteria, roughly 2 billion years ago. They were absorbed by another single-celled organism, and instead of being digested, they were integrated. They became part of the cell, still reproducing on their own schedule, still carrying their own DNA, still performing their original function, but now in service of a much larger organism. Every breath you take and every bite of food you eat is processed into usable energy by these ancient bacterial guests. You are not just in relationship with the microbial world. You are, in a profound sense, made of it. The very mechanisms of energy production in your cells are the legacy of a bacterial partnership so old that it has been incorporated into the core architecture of all complex life on Earth. Without that ancient merging, there would be no animals, no plants, no fungi, just single-celled organisms drifting through an ocean, producing no sunsets, hearing no birdsong, dreaming no dreams. The morning is warm now in our story. The dew has mostly gone, evaporated back into the air, taking its microbial passengers with it. The meadow is dry underfoot, and the grasses have straightened, lifting their seed heads back toward the sun. Somewhere in the distance, a river is running. Not our small stream, but a wider, older, slower river moving through low-water meadows, where the soil is so rich and dark it's almost black, built up over centuries by the flooding of the river and the slow accumulation of organic matter. In these water meadows, the soil microbiome is among the richest on Earth. Flooding brings not just silt, but microbial cargo from upstream. Entire communities from different landscapes deposited here and integrated into the local community. The diversity is extraordinary, and the function that diversity provides is extraordinary too. Nutrient cycling, carbon storage, greenhouse gas regulation. Healthy wetland soils are some of the most powerful carbon sinks on the planet, storing carbon that would otherwise be in the atmosphere. The microorganisms that manage this storage are doing climate work, regulating the chemistry of the atmosphere, the temperature of the planet, without any awareness that they're doing it, simply by doing what they do. The willow trees that stand along the edge of this river have their roots in that dark soil, and their roots are in intimate association with mycorrhizal fungi that help them access the water and nutrients they need to grow. Willow can grow remarkably fast in these conditions, several meters in a single season. And as it grows, it takes up carbon from the atmosphere and stores it in wood. This is part of why planting trees along rivers is not just aesthetically pleasing, but ecologically functional. The tree-fungus partnership is a carbon sequestration machine running on sunlight and soil chemistry. Feel free to leave a comment about what kind of landscape you imagine when you drift towards sleep. The answers are always wonderfully varied and beautiful. The river is wide and slow and bronze-colored in the afternoon light. A family of coots is moving along the far bank. Black birds with white foreheads, perpetually busy-seeming, diving and surfacing and calling to each other in sharp, irritable voices. Coots don't seem to have the contemplative quality of herons, but they are effective and successful, and the waterways they inhabit are richer for their presence. Their droppings fertilize the water, bringing nutrients from the land into the aquatic ecosystem. Their diving stirs up the sediment, releasing compounds back into the water column. Even the coot's irritability is functional. The day has come all the way around, and now it is evening again. The sun is low over the water meadow, and the river is gilded, and the willows are long shadows on the bank. You have been everywhere today, in the forest, beside the stream, in the meadow, under the rain, watching the stars, listening to the owl, following the spider's web to morning, and the warming day to afternoon, and now to this, the gentle close of a full day, the world settling back toward quiet. Your body is ready for sleep, not forced toward it, not struggling with it, but naturally arriving at it, the way the world arrives at evening, gradually, inevitably, without effort. The cortisol in your blood has been falling for hours. Melatonin is rising. Your core temperature has dropped slightly. Your heart rate is slower. Your digestion is easing. These are not things you're doing. They are things your body is doing, the old patterns of a biological clock that has been running for hundreds of millions of years, the clock that all life on Earth shares to some degree. The microorganisms in your gut are in their evening configuration. The bacteria that are most active in the morning, processing the day's first meal, responding to waking signals, have slowed. The ones that do most of their work at night are becoming more active, performing functions related to tissue repair, immune modulation, the production of certain neurotransmitters that influence the depth and quality of sleep. The microbiome is preparing in its own way for the night. The soil outside, wherever you are, is doing the same. The temperature has dropped. The bacterial metabolisms have slowed. The fungi are still threading through the dark, unhurried, as they always are. The trees are in their nighttime mode. Photosynthesis has stopped. Respiration continues. Water is moving upward from root to leaf tip by osmotic pressure, quietly, without pumps, without noise. The leaves are exchanging gases through their stomata, tiny pores that open and close depending on light, humidity, and chemical signals from the plant's internal systems. A forest at night is not asleep in the way we sleep. It is simply in a different mode, slower, quieter, but still entirely alive, still doing its work, still connected through the fungal web to every other tree in its community. The phytoncides are still in the air. If you were there, if you were standing in that dark forest right now, breathing the cool night air, your immune system would still be responding to them. Your cortisol would still be falling. Your body would still be receiving the ancient, wordless communication from the trees. You are where you belong. You are part of this. You are safe here. The boundary between your body and the natural world is softer than it seems. Every meal you eat carries microbial immigrants from the soil and the plants and the animals that grew it. Every breath carries spores and bacteria from the world outside. Every walk on unpaved ground, every time you let your hands touch soil, every forest you spend time in, these are all exchanges, all conversations between your inner world and the vast living outer one. You are not separate from nature. You never were. The nature of you and the nature of the world are made of the same ancient stuff, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures, running on the same microbial partnerships. This is the thing that the invisible world teaches if you let yourself receive it. You are not alone. You are accompanied by organisms so small they cannot be seen, in numbers so large they cannot be counted, doing work so essential it cannot be overestimated. They are in you and on you and around you, and most of them are benign, most of them are ancient, most of them have been part of the fabric of life on this planet for far longer than there have been beings capable of being grateful for them. And yet, here you are, aware of them in your own small way, aware of the forest and the rain and the soil and the slow mycorrhizal web connecting root to root across the dark earth, aware of the phytoncides in the air and the Mycobacterium vaccae beneath your feet and the ancient bacteria in your mitochondria making energy from every breath you take. You are awake to all of it, even as you move toward sleep. Perhaps especially as you move toward sleep, when the thinking mind steps back and something older and quieter takes over, something that has always known how to rest. The playlist is always there, whenever a night feels long or the quiet is hard to find. And if tonight's journey through the invisible world brought you something, a slower breath, a softer thought, a moment of feeling held by the enormous, patient, living earth, please leave a comment or a like. It is how this channel grows and how more people find their way to nights like this. Let your eyes close completely now if they haven't already. Let the warmth you're lying in be enough. Let the dark of your room be a gentle dark, the dark of a forest after rain, quiet and full of small living things going about their ancient work. The world is alive all around you. It is tending to itself as it has always done, as it will continue to do through the night and into the next morning and the morning after that. You don't need to tend to anything right now. The fungi are threading, the bacteria are cycling, the trees are breathing, the earthworms are turning the soil, the stars are sending their old light, and you are just here. Warm and still and carried by the earth, which has been holding living things through their sleep for hundreds of millions of years and knows exactly how to do it. Rest now. Everything is exactly as it should be. Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Nature channel. Find more gentle evenings in the playlist and drift off in good company.